Welcome, fellow bookworms, to Tibra's Den. My name is Whitney, and today we have our November wrap up, or my November wrap up. I originally started with 11 prompts. I did have 6 rollovers and 7 extras, and then I ended up reading 10 books total in the month. As always, we'll go over my stats, and then we'll work our way from the books I didn't get to that I'm not rolling over to the ones I'm going to roll over, and then to the books I got to, going from my least favorite to my favorite of the month based on star rating. And then I also have a top 3, which are just the ones that are really going to stick with me. They're not necessarily my favorite as far as star rating and enjoyment. So yeah, let's go ahead and get into it. So I did end up reading 3,148 pages. That averaged out to 104.93 pages per day. I read 7 books physically. I didn't have any digital books, and then I had 3 audio books, and audio hours equaled 48 hours and 8 minutes, which averaged 1 hour and 36.26 minutes per day. All my books were fiction. I did not have any nonfiction, and I did not have any rereads this month. My top moods were adventurous, dark, and then funny and emotional were tied, which is kind of ironic that those two went together. My genres, again, these overlap. I had 6 fantasy, 3 LGBTQIA+, 2 science fiction, 2 romance, 2 horror, 2 historical, 2 contemporary, and 1 young adult. So, yeah, that's kind of what we're working with here. So let's go ahead and start. Now, I did do a Native American reading vlog in the month of November. I will leave that video down below. And there was 2 books I was hoping I can maybe get to and I just didn't get to them. I didn't have time. So the first one that I was hopeful to get to was The Painted Drum by Louise Erdrich. I've had this one. I wanted to get to it last year, and I wasn't able to. I'm really interested in trying this author. And so maybe next year will be the year, but unfortunately I did not get to it this time. Then we had Wandering Stars by Tommy Orange. I read There by this author and really enjoyed it. I did not like the ending, but I really enjoyed it otherwise. And so when he came out with this book, I definitely snagged it and haven't been able to get to it yet. So hopefully, fingers crossed, I can get to this before next November, but if not, I definitely will be putting it on next November. This one was also a little bit heavier, and I had read some other heavy things, and so I needed something more light and fluffy and not another heavy read. So there is that one. Like I said, those 2 were just extras that I was hoping to get to during that reading vlog. Then we had a book that wasn't officially part of my priority series, but I had put it on in my journal. My sister sent me a reading journal, and one of the pages was, um, you know, books that you wanted to prioritize. And so these 3 I had put on there because I had extra space. And so I was looking at and I just didn't get to them. They were a little bit lower priority because I hadn't started the series. And so I think, how many are rollovers in this one? 2 of them were rollovers. And then 1 I actually got onto my game. And so let's see here. First up, we had, this one was a rollover, but it was for my October game, and that was the Mickey Mouse Gang and Grumpy Sunshine for Daisy and Donald. That will be going back into the honey jar, and that was The Fine Print by Lauren Asher. Still very, very interested in the series, but it will be one that will go on for next year. So there's that. And then likewise, I had book 2 from my October game, and that was Generational Family. This is Encanto. Again, we'll be going back in the honey jar, and that was Terms and Conditions, which is book 2. And then for my November game that I did not get to was the Swan Princess, and it was Moonlit Lake. So again, back in the honey jar, and that was the third book, Final Offer. So I'm not going to go to those two, but they will definitely be ones I will try to prioritize in 2026. Then we had, this one was for Eeyore, and it was mental health rep. Again, not going to be rolling this one over. And that was Archer's Voice by Mia Sheridan. I've been wanting to read this for a while, and I put it on for like the Adventures or Year in Aldea. I've heard it said both ways, as a book that like you just haven't gotten to. And still not getting to it. But again, I'm not gonna, try to rush it. When it comes up again, I will hopefully get to it at that point. So there's that one. And then another one that I had for the Adventures in Aldea, excuse me, and it was for an author, a popular author that you haven't read from yet. And then I did end up reading a different book by this author, so it didn't really work anymore anyway. But it also worked for my game. For Aladdin, Genie, or Jinn. And again, it's going to go back on the shelves. I'm not going to try to rush it onto like January's TBR. And that's Gods of Jade and Shadow by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. I ended up reading The Bewitching by this author in September, I believe, and absolutely loved it. And I have this one and Mexican Gothic. And so I'm very interested in both. But for now, this will just go back on the shelves, and we'll see when it works, to come up. This one, I thought about rolling over to January because December's book. So I thought about rolling this over to January, but I think I'm just going to wait just because they're a little bit denser. But I am hoping to get to it in the first quarter of the year of 2026. And this was for Simba, and it's On the Run or Runaway. And that was The King of Crows by Libba Bray. This was the last book in the Divider series. I did end up reading book 3, though, which we'll talk about in a bit. But this was the last book, and I just, I read the third book and was focusing on other things. So I didn't get to this one. Like I said, I'm not going to try to get it on January necessarily unless it just happens to work for January. But I am hoping to get it in the first quarter of 2026. So there's that. So those ones are all going just back on the shelf until they come up naturally, or I decide to just pick them up on a whim or whatnot. The next 4 are ones I'm going to really try to get on my January TBR, so we'll just have to see. The first 2, this one is the second book, and it's The Girl in the Tower by Catherine Arden. This is the Winter Night trilogy. And so this one was on my October TBR game, but I had used a reward, and I don't remember the prompt. Cat's wigging back there. And yeah, unfortunately didn't get to that, which meant I didn't get to the third book, which was on my November TBR, and that's The Winter of the Witch. And this one was, I had pulled a black disc, which means I needed 2 honey jar prompts, and we got really lucky with the first one, which was Rabbit, and that's free choice. And then the second one was a bookworm, which was chapter titles. Even though I'm hoping to roll these over into January, I'm going to go ahead and put those prompts back in the honey jar and just try to get these on in a different way. But yeah, still very interested in these, and I want to read them when it's still kind of wintry. We're about to hit 7 this coming week. We're going to be up to 75 again. And so it's like we're not getting much winter. We had a couple days where it was a little bit more chilly, but I still want to read these in the winter month. And so I love the first book, and I've heard really good things about these ones from you guys. And so, yeah, I'm definitely going to try to get to these in January. At least The Girl in Tower, if not both. So we'll just have to see. And then we had the last book from Love Light Farms that I need to read. This was for my character pick, which I got in Tigger, which is fast-paced or light-hearted. And I had chosen the last book in the Love Light Farms series, Business Casual by B.K. Borison. I did want to read this in the autumn because I've been trying to read them seasonally. But at this point, I just want to wrap this up. And so I will be, fingers crossed, getting to this one in January as well. And then the last one that I'm hoping to roll over to January, this was for Lost City of Atlantis, and it was Mythical Cities. And so for this one, I had gone with Celestial Monsters, which is book 2 in the Sun Bear duology. And yeah, I read the Sun Bear Trials and absolutely loved it. It was kind of one that wasn't fully on my radar, and I don't remember, like, did I pick it up on a whim or what happened there, but I ended up reading the first one and then immediately got this one because I really enjoyed the first one, and I'm looking forward to seeing where this story goes, and I don't want too much time to have passed. So it's not a huge deal if I don't get to this one. This is probably my lowest priority in January. I want to really focus on the other 3, but I am still hopeful I can get to this one as well. So those are all the ones that I didn't get to, and majority I'm not rolling over, and then the 4 I'm going to try to get to in January. And now we're on to the books that I did read. And so again, we start from the bottom and work our way up. I did not have any DNFs, which for my purposes are 1-star, and I did not have any 2-star reads. So that was fantastic. I did end up with 3 3-star reads. Kind of the bottom of the barrel. This was an extra for that Native American reading vlog. And I read The Truth According to Ember by Danica Nava. And I overall really enjoyed this one. The characters were a little bit flat. This is this author's debut novel. And the whole situation with Ember, so she ends up lying on her resume because she's not getting calls for interviews and such. So she is Native American, and her dad is white, and I think her mom's Native. And so on her resume, she decides to check the white box. And then she also says she has completed college when she hasn't, and she's looking for like an accounting position. And so she lies and says she completed college when she hasn't, and she has like some work experience handling the books for like her friend who has a jewelry business, who's willing to lie for her. And her and her friend work at this bowling alley, and since they're the ones that answer the phone, she decides to, say that she does the books there as well. Hi, sorry about that. My husband went and did a trash run, and then got some taco ding dong for us for lunch. And he got back. So I took a little break. I'm not really sure where I left off. I know I was talking about The Truth According to Ember by Danica Nava. So basically in this one, I think what I was saying was Ember lies on her application to get this accounting job. And from there, her lies just kind of spiral. And the company, it's like a startup tech company or something like that. Doesn't really know what they do, but it's a startup company, and they're doing pretty well for themselves. They have like a strict no dating policy. And she meets the IT guy, Denoa, and they, of course, start to have a little flirtation. And they end up going to a work trip in California. And they end up, kissing, and one of the other employees sees them kissing and starts blackmailing Ember. And yeah, her life just kind of spiraled from there. It was a little flat at times, but I really enjoyed the characters overall. The writing style was super easy to get into. And I enjoyed kind of the way the story went. Now, my problem with this one was Ember kind of would double down on lies. Like at one point, her and Danoa are dating, right? And she originally tells him, like, oh, I love cats because he has a cat. And then she goes to spend the night at his house, and she starts sneezing. He's like, are you allergic to cats? No, it's fine. Well, she wakes up in the morning and her face is all, allergy ridden. And she just doubles down, which didn't make sense. And in the end, it's like she's talking, and she's kind of changing her life and such. And she's like, I'm a good person. And like, I could see certain of the lies, like, especially like she would get embarrassed and she would lie or whatnot. I could see some of the lies and how like that wasn't her natural disposition to lie. But, like when she first lied because she was just frustrated, so she lied on her application, and then some of the lies because she'd get embarrassed and then just lie. I could see some of those, but her doubling down and such, and then at the end, oh, well, I'm not a liar, I'm a good person. And it's like, some of those lies, like, no, like, you are a liar, you know? And so little things like that. And like I said, the characters were a little flat. I think the pacing of this, because the first half of it was like just a lot of build up and nothing happens. So I think the pacing was off because the second half with the blackmail, the relationship pacing was good, but the second half with the blackmail was a little bit rushed. And so that really kind of fell off. And it's like, I wish, that blackmail had started earlier on, but of course it couldn't because the relationship pacing. But with the relationship, I will say Danawa, the way he reacts felt very real. Like when he caught her in a lie, he's like, no, like, I'm not dating you. Like, this, just no, you know? But when they would talk and kind of try to resolve the conflict, that's where it really fell short because there wasn't enough depth and development there. But for a debut novel, I actually really enjoyed it. And I did get the other book this author has written, which is Love is a War Song, I think is what it's called. I did immediately order that. I'm definitely interested in reading more by this author. I like that Native American representation in a contemporary romance. I really love that. So I am going to be reading more by this author. Like I said, I think it's just the 2 books right now, and I did order Love is a War Song. So I'll definitely be reading that as well. But overall, not bad. Needed a little bit more development and a little bit of changing to the pacing and such. And Ember as a character, like some of the ways she doubled down on the lies didn't really fit, I don't think. And was just kind of adding unnecessary like drama to it, I guess. But not terrible. I did enjoy myself with it. The next one was another extra for that Native American reading vlog, and that's Coyote N, which is Native American folk tales retold by Joe Hayes with illustrations by Lucy Jelinek. And so you have like Coyote and the Rock, Coyote and the Locust, which that one was one of my favorite ones, the Locust one. So just Coyote and a bunch of other animals. And it was very simplified, I guess. Let's see, yeah, you have the coyote and his bow, skunk, turkey, rabbit, the mice, locust, the rock, the bluebird, the blackbirds, the rattlesnake, turtle. I think I like turtle as well. The quail and the horned toad. Um, and so in the introduction, he talks about how this is kind of his take on native stories and folklore and such, because each tribe is going to have like a different version, and depending on like some Native American tribes from different areas might have a version of the same story, but it's going to be different based on them. And then the different, tribes within a nation is going to have a little bit of different take on things. And so it was kind of his take on it. It was very simplified. I wanted to like a little bit more from it, I guess. And also and I don't know how much was him and how much was like true to like the actual Native American folklore. But one thing that just it's kind of silly because you have a talking coyote and talking animals and such. But like at one point, he's trying to trick, I think it's the skunk. Um, and he's like, wouldn't it be nice to have a fresh roasted whatever creature they were after? And for some reason, them cooking the food just like, I just couldn't get behind it. And I don't know why, like it was just one of those things like that really stuck in my head. But overall, I actually really, really enjoyed this one. It's kind of something I like folklore and such from different cultures and whatnot. So I just wanted a little bit more from this. It's very simple. I did really like the illustrations. I thought they were pretty cool. So, yeah, enjoyed this one, but it was just pretty simple, and that's why it only got 3 stars. My last 3 stars, this was for a rollover. Um, and like I said, I was gonna try to get King of Crows on here I got it on my November TBR, but I was able to read the 3rd book, but not that one. And it was Dictionary Word of the Day, which was a bookworm, and the word was flagrant. And I chose Before the Devil Breaks You by Libra Bray. So this is the 3rd book in the Diviner series. And I chose this one because Evie is very like flagrant when it comes to like the rules and such. So that's kind of how I connected it. And this one, So I think I've given each of the books in this series 4 stars. The first two, like, you didn't really have the diviners necessarily together. Where this one, like, the overall plot and the diviners are now finally kind of solidified and together. And I did appreciate that one, that aspect of it. And like in the first two books, like the first one was more like these occult murders and trying to figure that out. The second one was the sleeping sickness. And then this one we have the ghost. My problem with this, I really like the writing. Like, she definitely paints a picture and really pulls you in. The characters, sometimes they get a little lost, especially like Evie and Theta. They can kind of seem very similar to each other. So the characters, their personality and such doesn't always shine through. But overall, I really enjoy the characters and how they all interact and such. My problem with these, especially this book, and I did notice it in the other books, but especially this one, it's just too busy. It's doing too much. So you have like the 1920s flapper girl lifestyle aspect, which I did enjoy. Then you have like the occult and the supernatural aspect, which is what I'm looking for in this series, and I really love that aspect. Then you get this a little bit of a spoiler, so if you don't want spoilers, just skip past this book. But you also have like a secret government experiment thing happening here. And like government conspiracy, which I don't love. Then you have like the relationships. And the romance in this one in particular, not so much in the other ones, like Theta and I think it's Memphis, those two, yes, because that's from the very beginning, like that's their relationship is part of the story. But she added in with the others, and you have Maple who has a crush on Jericho, and that's always been there. But in this time, like, she added in for each character, and she didn't devote enough time to it though, and so it just didn't make sense. And then you have like drama from the characters past that got added in, and it's just like it's too much, it's too busy, and she's not devoting enough time to certain things, and it's just busy. And like the ghost aspect, yeah, it was prevalent throughout, but not like the other ones where like that was the forefront with the murders and then the sleeping sickness. The ghosts like should have been at the forefront because it's so busy with everything else, though they really weren't. Like, yes, they were part of the whole story and they're part of the overall series plotline and such, but it was just too busy. Like, there's just too much going on, and I really wish she had just streamlined it and focused more on that paranormal aspect than trying to add in government conspiracies and drama from the past and all that kind of thing. Like, it's too busy. And that's why this only got a 3-star. As much as I love the writing and I really get pulled in, and even when I wasn't reading it, I was ready to jump back in and such, it's just too busy. So that only got 3 stars from me. Then we had, let's see here, 4 stars as well. The bottom of the barrel for this one, this was just a free choice. And I went with Things We Left Behind by Lucy Score. This is the third and final book in the Knock 'Em Out series. And this one, I really loved the first part of the story. The first book I gave 5 stars. The second book I think I gave 3 stars because I really couldn't get behind Nash and the way he like manhandled Lena and such. So the second book only got 3 stars, and I know I ended up giving this one 4 stars. And I kind of wavered between 4 or 3 stars, but because I love the first part of this, and I definitely like this better than the second book, I decided to go with 4 stars. And then this one, you have Sloane and Lucien, and they have a history, and you get that from the first couple books, but nobody really knows what went down with them. And so you're learning that, and you get these flashbacks to the past timeline, which I really loved. And I like seeing their younger selves, and how they navigated and kind of what happened between them. Um, and that was all fine. My problem was when they finally get together. First, it's just a physical thing. Like, we're just getting each other out of our systems, and then we can go back to hating each other and whatnot. So it's just a physical thing. Um, then something happens, and the way Lucien reacts, like, okay, like, I didn't love it, but I could see what's going down there. Well, then it's kind of a little bit of a romantic suspense with the series plot line. And so something else happens, and so they kind of have that reconciliation. But the way Lucian approached that, I did not like at all. Like, there was no intimacy between them, but there was no consent as far as like him inserting himself back in her life and just saying this is the way it's gonna be. Like, not listening to her, no consent there, even though it wasn't like he wasn't assaulting her or anything like that. There wasn't any intimacy. Like, that's the line he drew. Like, okay, I won't cross this line. Even though I'm super attracted, I won't cross that line, but I'm going to force myself into her life, basically. And I didn't like that. I did not like how the author did that, and it just kind of gave me the ick and ruined the relationship. Sloan was saying no, like, I gave you two chances and you blew it, so we're done. And he could have won her back over a different way. And he does do like this grand gesture in the end, which again worked for the characters, even though I didn't love it. And I did like how like the overall series plot kind of wrapped up in this one. It worked overall for me. And so, yeah, it was just kind of the way that reconciliation was handled that gave me the ick, and I didn't like it. But I love those past timelines and seeing their relationship from the past, and kind of what happened there. I absolutely ate that up. So, like, the first half of the book, I loved it and couldn't get enough. But then I just got the ick and it dropped it down for me. So there is that one. Then let's see here. The next one was a rollover from I guess October, because I wanted to read it on Halloween. And it was actually a rollover from a previous month from my family book club, and that was The Twisted Ones by T. Kingfisher. And so I started this on Halloween and then continued it in November. And so in this one, we're following Mouse, and she is asked by her father to go clean out her grandmother's house, who was a hoarder. And when she's there, she finds, notes from her step grandfather about these like twisted ones and weird things are happening. And she has this dog and whatnot. And yeah, overall, it wasn't bad. Like, I had a good time with it. I really liked the characters. Mouse's narration in particular, I liked the narration, and like her inner dialogue and such. I really enjoyed Mouse, and I love the dog. Enjoyed him, and then there's like this neighbor named Foxy, and honestly, like, it was a good time. I remember it, but I don't remember what exactly dropped it down for me, because I really enjoyed the characters. I think I wanted more of the creepy vibes and such. And you get that kind of in the middle. And like at one point I read, and there was like one of the creatures looking in the window, and that creeped me out. But in the end, it wasn't as all that creepy. But it was a fun time. I definitely prefer The Hollow Places by this author over this one. But yeah, I had a good time. I think kind of the setup and what these ones were, didn't quite fully hit for me, and I think that's kind of what dropped it down. But overall, it was fun, and I really like the character of Mouse and such. But yeah, 4 stars on that one. Like I said, I can't remember exactly what that was. The very first book I read, and it's not as memorable in my mind as some of the others. So my last 4 star, this was for my family book club, and I also had it for The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and it was Church Sanctuary. And so for this one, I chose The Buffalo Hunter by Stephen Graham Jones. Like I said, this was my family book club, so I did discuss it with my mom and my sister. We're the only ones that read it. My nieces have kind of dropped off. 2 of my nieces are still somewhat interested, but my oldest niece, she's pregnant with baby number 3, so I doubt she's gonna rejoin this year, because she'll have 3 little ones. But my middle niece, I think she's trying. She's trying. She just doesn't always finish the books and whatnot. But yeah, this one, I think we all agreed we really liked the story. It definitely has very heavy topics. And we were talking, and I was like, it's kind of weird because like the horror aspect actually was a relief from those heavier topics, which you wouldn't think horror would be like the lightness you need to get relief from heavier topics, but in this case it really worked, and I think the author balanced that really well. um, our biggest thing, all of us agreed it was really hard to get into, and at points it's kind of hard to follow along his writing and understand what he's talking about. And I found that with the other books I've read by this author as well. You kind of just have to trust the process and not overthink it. My sister and I both agreed it would have been nice to have like a glossary or things spelled out for us. Because even though he's using like, like long ears or big ears or something like that for like the mules. I thought they were oxen based on the description. I thought the long ears were mule or oxen, not mules. Um, Even though it doesn't really make sense. I don't oxen don't have long ears, but anyway, and so like things like that, like me and my sister both spent a lot of time trying to figure out what the animals were, and so just like, okay, this is that, and he did that at some points, like the elk or whatever, and like dirty face or mice, which I didn't get at first, and so I just spent a lot of time. My sister and I both spent a lot of time trying to figure out the animals. It's like we didn't need to do that, but that's where our brains went. So a glossary or spelling it out within the story would have been very helpful. Um, but yeah, overall, we all really loved this. We weren't a huge fan of like the end. So you have the descendant, and she's the one this diary or journal was found in a construction, and she's the descendant of this pastor who wrote the diary, who was getting confessions by a Native American called Good Stab. And I ended up switching from the physical copy to the audio. So I read 90 pages physically, which I did count in my physical page count. But then I switched to the audio and I re listened to it via the audio, like from the beginning. I re listened to it just because I didn't want to jump into the audio in the middle, especially since I was already confused. And so I ended up listening to it, and the narrator for Good Stab was so good. Like, I really liked that narrator. The one for the pastor was pretty good. And then the one for the descendant, Etsy, like, didn't love that narrator, didn't love that character. And at first I was like, what's the point of her in the beginning? Like, it's really not necessary. Like, yeah, she gets the diary and fine, you could set it up that way, but I really didn't think it was all that necessary. But the way he brought her back into it in the end made her have a purpose, but none of us really loved it. The bulk of the story between the pastor and the confessions from Good Stab, like, that was really good, but then the ending, like, it was fine. And at least it gave purpose to this descendant, but none of us really loved it. So yeah, definitely trigger warnings. Like, it's heavy, like, it's very heavy and it's very infuriating. But really, really good, actually. I think this is probably my favorite of our book club reads. Like, very good, but his writing style is just kind of hard and confusing sometimes. So there's that. Then we had 4 5-star reads, and there's 2 authors here. So they kind of go together. So the first one was actually a rollover from October, I believe. And I had used the reward. So again, I can't remember what the actual prompt was, but I used the reward, so I didn't have to worry about it. And this is book 2 in the Between Earth and Sky trilogy by Rebecca Roanhorse, and this is Fevered Star. So this was my least favorite of the 3, but obviously still got 5 stars. I ended up listening to this one as well, so this was another one of my audios. Both the books in the series I ended up listening via audio. I think I would have done better if I had physically read these, but for time purposes and such, I needed audiobooks. And yeah, this one's definitely very much a middle book, and it's kind of bridging the gap between what happened in the first book and what happens in the third book. But the characters have kind of split off, and so you're getting interactions between different characters than what you got in the first book. And I actually really like that. I like seeing the different characters interact. Um, Even though like some of the characters I wanted them to be together, And so yeah, so you're getting different interactions. And I really, really appreciated that one. But like I said, it's a lot of kind of just bridging the gap. It was still a great story, still very engaging, and love, love, love the characters in here. So basically, in this series, you're following. You have this world, and in the first book, you have Shyla, which I was pronouncing it wrong. I was pronouncing it because it's the X, so I was pronouncing it Zyala, but Shyla. Sorry, I'm stumbling because I'm overthinking it. Shyla is how it was pronounced in the audiobook. so, um, so you have her, and she's hired by this lord across the sea, and that's where she lives. I can look at the map. There's a map. So Kukola, um, and so I'll show you the map so you can kind of know what I'm talking about. So she's over here. She's actually a teak, but she doesn't have anything to do with her people. And so she's over here. She gets hired by this lord, Basham, and to take Serapio across the sea over here to Tova. And so she has to go across the sea and bring him to Tova, which he needs to be there before the convergence, which is an eclipse. And so you're following them in the first book. And then in Tova, you have the Watchers, who is like this religious sect. And there's 4 lead Watchers, and then they have like their dedicants and such. And then you have 4 factions that have a treaty, and the Watchers kind of oversee everything. But back when the Watchers ended up slaughtering the Crow faction, and so they kind of have, resentment against the Watchers. And then there's kind of like a political play with Golden Eagle. And then you have the 2 other factions, which I forget, Water Strider, and I forget the other one. And then also across the canyon, you have the Ma, which is like they basically just work as servants. And so they're only allowed to cross and come into the other areas to work as servants, essentially. And our sun god, not sun god, sun priest. Um, so it's kind of more complicated, and I'm just having trouble with my words today. Uh, Winged Serpent is the other one. But yeah, the Sun Priest, sorry. You have the Sun Priest, the Priest of Knives, the Priest of Secure, and the Priest of Records. And so our Sun Priest is actually from the Maw, and she's been able to rise, and she's trying to make some changes and such, but some of the other priests are in some of the political factions. It's supposed to be kind of a separation of church and state, essentially, but there's political play. And when they come to the tower and become watchers, they're supposed to let go of their connections. And so that way they're more objective and fair, but that hasn't quite happened. And so there's kind of a power play within the watchers and within the factions. Um, and then you have Serapio coming by the convergence. And so, yeah, there's a lot in play here. And so the second one's following the events after the convergence, but before it kind of all wraps up. So I really did enjoy this, but this is my least favorite of the 3 just because it's more of a bridge. But my favorite thing about this was watching the different characters interact. So then my favorite and my next 5-star read, and this was for Moana, which was sailing or voyaging, which works really well with Shyla because she is a teak and she's a water people, and there is definitely sailing and such in this. And so that was Mirrored Heavens. And so this is the final book, and everything's kind of coming together as far as like the political landscape of this area. Shyla and her role and Lord Balam and kind of how he plays into it. And so there's a lot of different moving parts. And you basically, I would say you have 3 main factions that are kind of in a power struggle. And none of them are allies, but you obviously have the clear one that's not good. And then you have the other two that aren't allies, but are against, they're against each other too, but they're also against this other faction who's, you as a reader, he's the bad one, and you can see that. And then you have the two other factions. And so even though they're not allies, like, you're rooting for both of them. And so it's definitely, this one really played with my emotions a lot, especially in the end. You get so many different ending types, like styles, like, you have your happy ending, and then like the ending that you really don't get closure on, and then the ending that like you get closure, but it's not necessarily happy. You get all that. And so it really was kind of this emotional roller coaster because we're following so many different people. And you were following another character that's like the son of the Carrion Crow leader and whatnot. And so, yeah, you just get so many different endings. You're getting so many different, like, oh, you're rooting for both of these, but they're kind of enemies too. And this one's the bad guy. And so you're definitely rooting for him to fail. And it's just, it was so much. And there's so many moving parts. But this is done where, like Before the Devil Breaks You was so busy. This is busy too. And it has so many moving parts, but it works. Like, it has a focus. So even though it's busy and there's moving parts and it's a lot, it has that focus where Before the Devil Breaks You by Liber Break didn't have that focus. So it's not, necessarily that I don't like busy, complicated plots and whatnot. It's just, it needs that focus. And this definitely had that. And the ending, like, again, just emotional roller coaster. I really liked how it all played together. Except one of the characters, you don't get closure, and I'm like, I want to know what happens to her, And so, yeah, absolutely love this. The series as a whole, 5 stars. I gave every single book a 5-star, and so yeah, that was my bottom 2 5 stars, and then like I said, the top 2 are also the same not Rebecca Roanhorse, but from the same author. And so first up, we have, these were just extras. So excuse me, the first up, we have book 4 of the Dungeon Crawler Carl series, and that's The Gate of the Feral Gods by Matt Dinniman. So far, book 3 has been my favorite, and I'm going to talk about that next because it was the top read of the month. But I really enjoyed this one as well. I like the setup. I think what this author does really well is each floor of the dungeon is so different. And you're getting a lot of interactions between other crawlers and NPCs and such, but at the same time, it's really easy to follow the characters. Like, you know exactly who he's talking about. And like the system, like, because it's a dungeon and it's a little bit like sci-fi and like game based, like, he can kind of make the rules up, but at the same time he does very well keeping it where you can understand and you kind of know what's happening. And he just does such a great job. They're funny, they're fast paced, they're fun. And yeah, we read 2 of the books in November and started this is book 4. We started book 5. We were reading it currently. If you've been watching my 24 Days of Bookmas, I've been talking about how we're still reading book 5. And I was going to wait till January, but my husband and I just love this world so much. And we get so much enjoyment out of it. Right before bed, we sit and read a few chapters. And it's just a really good time. Like I said, I really like the setup. For this floor of the dungeon, I thought that was a lot of fun. And again, you kind of have a lot of different moving parts in this one. And just had a great time with it. So there's that one. And then my favorite book of the month was, of course, book 3, which is the Dungeon Anarchist Cookbook. And this one kind of had like a train and maze theme to the dungeon floor. And there's an author note at the beginning. It's like, don't take it, don't focus on the numbers or the names. Like, they're not really all that important until the end. So don't overthink that. And I appreciated that note at the beginning because otherwise I definitely would have been. And this one was just my favorite. Like, there were so many like scenes that had me laughing so hard, and I could just picture it so perfectly. Like, he really paints the picture with his writing. Um, and yeah, I absolutely love this. Has been my favorite so far. My husband says his favorite is book one because he thinks that the author did such a fantastic job at setting up the story and setting up the world and the game and everything without bogging it down, which I agree. But this one was by far my favorite because there was just so many moments that had me absolutely laughing. And it's such a fun. I love the interactions between Carl and Princess Donut and with the other characters as well. And it's fun, how he brings in, like I said, the NPCs and how he brings in the AI and, some of the showrunners and such, and how there's an underlying depth to this. That you can either just read this for fun, or you can really analyze it and connect it to real world things. And so, yeah, I absolutely, this was my favorite book of the month for sure. So, like I said, I think Dungeon Crawler Carl, every month we're reading is probably going to be the top book of the month as far as star rating. But of course, we still have my top three as well. So, the number one spot goes to The Buffalo Hunter by Stephen Graham Jones. I forgot to say when I was talking about it, there's also a vampire aspect in there. And I like the unique take the author had on the vampire. Like, I really, really like that. I found it so interesting, and I really enjoyed that. I like the historical element and kind of the emotions those brought about, because it really does make you just so angry. And so I really like kind of that part of the story, and like I said, the emotions that it brought out in me. And then I like the balance between the really heavy themes and then the horror. Like I said, horror you generally wouldn't think like that lightens up the story, but in this case it really did. You needed that balance because the heavy aspects were just so infuriating. And so I really appreciated that. Number two actually goes to the Dungeon Anarchist Cookbook by Matt Dinniman. I just like the layout of that floor. Like, I just really loved how it was laid out. I love the funny and vivid scenes. Like I said, he really painted a picture, and I was laughing so hard. And then the interactions between all the characters, like I said, it's not just between him and Donut. I love him and Donut together. I love the way they interact with each other, but the interactions between the other players, the NPCs, and I really like how he brings in the NPCs, and you know they're part of the story as well. And like I said, even though it's changing between floors, like you really get a good sense and you can remember these characters. And I just love all the interactions between him and the AI. Like, it's just a lot of fun. And then the last one I put was Mirrored Heavens by Rebecca Roanhorse. Shyla and Serapio's relationship, like, they are some of my favorite characters I've read as far as a relationship goes. Like, I absolutely love those two together. They're just gonna be some of my favorites. The emotional roller coaster of the ending, like, I love that. Like, I love that we got different types of ending and kind of like the emotions that I was up and down. Like, I love that it brought that out. And then all the moving parts, like I said, it's complicated and such, but it really works. Like, the author did such a fantastic job juggling all the different characters and all the different moving parts. The political interactions, the magic. There's kind of like a God element to it as well. And I just loved it completely. So that ends up being number three. And yeah, that is my wrap up. I would love to know if you've read any of these books, if you're interested in reading any of these books. Now that I've talked about them, maybe what your favorite book from November was. If you just want to let me know you're here and you're helping to support the channel by commenting, you can always leave a rabbit or any type of animal emoji. I don't know if there's a buffalo, but if there is, feel free to leave that, or a blackbird for the Between Earth and Sky series, because that plays a major part. or cat for Princess Donut. Like, there's all kinds of animals in these books, but yeah, you can always leave an emoji down in the comments below to let me know you're here. I'm going to go ahead and leave you guys here. Happy reading, everyone. Bye.